Good afternoon, everybody. How are you doing? So, kind of driving down the road here with my grandson in the car with me. But I wanted to take some time. Got about an hour drive back home. I'm not going to talk for an hour. The first video I did was about 30 minutes long, and my wife told me that was way too long. So, those of you that know my wife know that she's going to always lead me in the right direction. So I'm doing a video number 2, and this video is obviously in response to the social unrest and social injustice that's going on in our country right now. Specifically, this video is designed to hopefully answer the question that I keep getting from my white friends, white counterparts, white associates. A lot of them are dear people that I love dearly and I respect, but they're just in a standstill of not knowing how to help and what to do. So I'm often asked the question like, okay, so now that the protests are going on and we see things are happening, we've seen it going on for years, how can we help? What can we do to help? And so hopefully this video that I'm taking will be informative to you. It's not designed to lash out at anyone. Hopefully it'll educate you a little bit and provide you some insight from my perspective and based on my experience, what you can do to help in this situation, to help ease the racial tensions and to help move our society toward change and the betterment of the Black community. Most of you know I'm an educator. I'm a teacher. I'm a administrator, principal, assistant principal at a high school, and I have over 20, probably roughly 2,500 kids on my campus. I love all of my kids, and they know that. They will tell you that. I treat them like I treat my own kids. I expect from them what I expect from my own kids. And I have very high expectations for them and for their families. And so they know that what I'm about to say to you is true. And it's something that they've probably heard from me in the past as well. So to simply answer the question, what do we do now? How can we help? So I'm going to give really 4 points, mainly a summary of those 4 points of what you can do to help. But first, I want to start with just a couple of stories of my experience with systematic racism. So I heard another Black man say today, actually, he was on Fox News, and he was a former member of the Urban League and a former member of the Coalition for Civil Rights. And he basically said something, and I'm going to paraphrase, I don't have it in front of me, but he doesn't understand systematic racism, and he doesn't understand why Black people are consistently talking about systematic racism, which kind of surprised me considering he was a member of the Urban League and Coalition for Black America, Black Americans. So I'm gonna answer. I'm just gonna give you some really quick examples of what systematic racism looked like, so that people can have a better understanding of what Black people are saying when they say systematic racism. And I'm gonna give these from my experience. So the first experience, my wife and I, and most of you know my wife is white. We've been married 33 years. We have 2 biracial children, and then my oldest son is white. He became my son at a little over a year and a half when I married his mother, and he's now 30, will be 34 years, actually just turned 34 years old. So he's been my son for almost 33 and a half years, or 32 and a half years. My youngest son, his wife is white. They have 2 children who are biracial. My daughter-in-law is Canadian. My family has a lot of biracial, multicultural, multi ethnicities within the family, and I love that because we spend a lot of time talking about race and talking about culture, and you're really talking about how the things that we need to do to really prepare our kids and grandkids for a better future. And we also challenge them based on the things that are going on in this country. But back to the story about my wife and I. We hadn't been married very long, maybe 5 or 6 years or so, maybe 7 years, and we were driving one day coming over the Lake Ray Hubbard Bridge that comes into Rowlett. And many of y'all know that Lake Ray Hubbard Bridge, when you come into Rowlett, there's usually a cop sitting there at the just right as you come over the bridge into Rowlett. And so, but anyway, we were driving on that bridge, and I noticed this truck behind me, and he kept getting close to my bumper. Then he'd pull up on side, and then he'd get back close to my bumper, those kind of things. And so he pulled around me, and he was waving at my wife's window. And we had an old beat up Jeep, and at the time, and so I thought something was wrong with the car or something. The tire's about to fall off or something. And he waved. My wife rolled the window down, and he pointed at her, and he said, "Don't y'all think y'all have had enough kids?" And rolled up his window and sped off. At the time, I had my 3 children in the car with me, my 2 biracial kids and my white son. Also had our 2 godchildren in the car with us, who are also biracial. And so that was one example of racism, systematic racism, because that man had what we call an implicit bias, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. And my wife and I have been constantly, even over the past 33 years, the people that know me know we love on everybody, and we take care of people, we love on people, we sacrifice for people, we do everything that we can within our power to give and provide and support others and love on others during difficult time. But over the 33 years, we've still been victimized. People look at us crazy. When my wife and I, we lived out in Seagoville for several years, and I bet we got pulled over probably 6 or 7 times, maybe even more, by cops. And we'd pull over and what's going on? And they wouldn't come to my side of the window. They would go to my wife's side of the window, and they'd ask her, is she okay? Are you okay, ma'am? And she, why wouldn't she be okay? But just things like that, is everything okay? Are you doing okay? Anything we need to know, stuff like that. Again, systematic racism. Just recently, last weekend, as a matter of fact, we 2 weeks ago, we went and visited our son and his wife up in North Carolina. We have a new grandbaby there, and so we wanted to go up and see the family and see both of our grandkids, our grandsons there. So we spent a week up there with them, and just had an amazing time. And so last Saturday, as we left to come home, we thought we'd leave a little bit early, and that we'd stop in Atlanta. We'd never been to Atlanta, and so we thought, let's stop in Atlanta. Let's see the city, because our kids are moving back to Iowa, so we didn't know if we'd ever get that way again. And so we plan to stop in Atlanta. And so as we're driving from North Carolina to Atlanta, we noticed a lot of people driving up. They'd speed up, and then when they got close to us, they'd slow down and drive beside us, and those kind of things. And I'd speed up, and they'd speed up, and then they'd get in front of us, and then they'd slow down, and then I'd try to whip around them, and things like that. And so, and I'm driving our new BMW, that's not tricked out or anything. It looks exactly like it did when it came off the showroom floor. Nothing to bring attention to us. We're just driving down the highway, and but people would be driving and would, as they were going past us, they'd slow down and look and gaze and those kind of things, and just craziness. And so, it's about 7 hours to drive from North Carolina to Atlanta. And by the time we got to Atlanta, we were so exhausted just from all of those things and the stuff that was going on and the things that were going through our mind. We didn't stop. We just kept going. We didn't want to take the risk of being there in Atlanta or spending the night in Atlanta or trying to eat in a restaurant and people taking offense to my wife and I being together, with me being black and her being white, in the year 2020. So very interesting. That's just a couple of instances that we've experienced racism. Even people who we feel and we believe this to be true, that we've done nothing but consistently love on people and do our very best to try to be the very best people in this country that we live in, that we can be. We raised 3 wonderful children. All 3 of our children have college degrees. Both of my daughter-in-laws have college degrees. They're hardworking people. It's just, so those are some things that we've experienced as people who that society has said, well, if you do this and if you do that and, you get an education and all that, things will happen better for you. Well, we're still experiencing systematic racism, even though we've achieved those things. Just some food for thought there. In my experiences, I've experienced systematic racism in hiring, interviewing for jobs. I've actually had someone tell me after I interviewed for a principal job, man, you did great in that interview. You were the best candidate. You did everything right. The only thing I would tell you is, and I'm quoting, the only thing I would tell you is, instead of using words like I work with my teachers, to use words like I collaborate with my teachers. I was told that, and I was told that was one of the things I got marked off on. So just the fact that I use words like I work with my teachers, which I do work with my teachers, instead of collaborate, I was looked past because I didn't use the right language in the interview in order to tip the scales to get the position. So just things like that I faced in my life, in my career, my family has faced, to give you a better understanding of systematic racism and what it looks like from the black perspective. So the question was posed, and I'm going to answer the question, what can I do? What can I do now to really help the situation? And so this is my answer based on, again, my experiences to my white friends who are asking me these questions. This is what I would say to you. And I would say the same thing to any of my black friends that would ask me these questions. What can I do to help champion the cause and move it forward toward change? So the first thing we've got to do is do self-reflection. We really need to challenge our implicit biases. Implicit biases are those biases we have based on our beliefs one way or another. And the thing about implicit bias is it's unconscious. It's done unconsciously. It's things that we don't have to think about, those biases that we don't have to think about. So, and I'll just give something as simple as saying, man, the Dallas Cowboys will always be my favorite team, and I don't care what Jerry Jones does or says or whatever, they're always my favorite team. Well, you have an implicit bias for the Dallas Cowboys, and no matter how good they are, how bad they are, they're still, in your eyes, better than any other team in the NFL. That's what an implicit bias is. And it's something that you don't really think about. You don't reflect and say, let me think about what's going on with the Dallas Cowboys and if they're still classified, if I should still classify them as a favorite team or a reputable organization. You just, from the get-go, without even thinking about it, they're your favorite team. So that's what an implicit bias looks like. And from a racial standpoint, I will use what the people are fighting in the streets about as an implicit bias when it comes to cops and blacks. The implicit bias is we're guilty until proven innocent, instead of we're innocent until proven guilty. And so we're treated as if we're guilty before we're given the opportunity to even prove our innocence. We're already bound to be guilty, and we're treated that way in the streets. That's an implicit bias, and that's something that we've got to change in our society and in our community. So that's the first thing we got to do, is challenge our implicit biases. The second thing we got to do is we've got to build our cultural competence. So cultural competence is our ability to understand and value different cultures, and really be able to try to have a better understanding of different cultures and how they interact within society. And so I shared the other day a TED Talk post by Melody Hobson, and one of the things she said is we've got to surround ourselves with people that don't look like us, that don't act like us, that don't talk like us, so that they can challenge our assumptions. Because right now, and you look around yourself, you can go in and look around your own self, where the community that you live in, the people that you interact with on a daily basis, and the people that you talk to on a daily basis, and think about how many of those people actually don't look like you, or don't act like you, or don't talk like you. And you'll find that your cultural competence is very low because you haven't surrounded yourself with people that don't look like you, and people that don't act like you, or don't talk like you, or don't have the social or economic means that you have. And so it's difficult for you to understand what those people are going through, or what their culture is like, or what they're dealing with, because you're not surrounding yourself with those types of people. The third thing I would say is, once we challenge our implicit biases and start building our cultural competence, we then have to build our cultural intelligence. So cultural intelligence is our ability, once we have cultural competence, is our ability to interact with people and have bold conversations and courageous conversations with people, so we can help them work toward change. Because right now, if we don't have a better understanding of the different cultures, the black culture or Hispanic culture or the Indian culture, or what people are going through right now from a socio-economic or equitable standpoint, then it's difficult for us to have an intelligent conversation about change. And so we've got to build our cultural competence, and then we've got to build our cultural intelligence, so that we can go to the table and have conversations that will effectively create change. And then once we've done that, then again, like I said, we can have those bold conversations about change, and really be able to see both sides of the table, have a better understanding where people are coming from, so that we can work toward change. And so those are the things that I would encourage my white friends to do, is really work on those three things, so that we can get to number 4. Because we can't have bold and courageous conversations about race, and about change, and about equity, and about social injustice, about social economic opportunities, economic and financial wealth, and income, and those kind of things, hiring practices, school curriculum, the implicit biases that we come into schools and organizations with. We can't have a valid conversation about that until we do those three things, which are reflect on our implicit biases, really know what they are, because right now you do those things unconsciously. And then we start to build our cultural competence and then our cultural intelligence, so we can have a good and effective conversation to lead to change. So that's my response right now. And that's what I can give you right now, because, and I'll be very honest with you. I've kept an eye on social media. I've tried to add some things to really highlight and open the eyes of some of the people that are friends of mine, people that I love and I care about, family and friends, and try to open their eyes to really start thinking about systematic racism through the lens of the people who are being oppressed. And I'll tell you this, Black wealth has increased. I will tell you that. But I will be honest with you and tell you that Blacks have had to work so much harder to get there than our white counterparts. And I'll just give you another example of my experience. Having the educational background that I have a bachelor's degree, a master's degree. I'm working on my doctorate degree right now. I have white counterparts that make more money than me, but they have the same or lesser educational background that I do. I have white colleagues that have gotten promotions and things like that ahead of me, not because they are better educators than me, because I've sat and talked with some of them and have been a mentor to some of these men, but because they've gotten the opportunity to be promoted because of how the system is designed. And so, those things that we're experiencing, we've got to make those changes. So until we can approach the courageous and bold conversations from the standpoint of challenging our implicit biases, and then building and creating the appropriate cultural competence and cultural intelligence to be able to have a rational and effective conversation about change, we're going to continue to stay in this position. So what can we do? I just gave you some things to look at, some things to reflect on, some things to start building on. If you want to talk to me about how to do those things, I'll be willing to work with would love to sit with you and talk to you about those things, and how we can work through those things together. But you've got to be willing to do that. For my students and my colleagues, people that I love and adore, here's one thing I'm going to promise you. I am going to work toward change. That's my goal. That's my mission. I am going to have bold and courageous conversations with the people that want to have them. We're not going to always agree on everything. We may not even come to a resolution. But I'm going to create opportunities for change by having those conversations. And then my next goal is to work toward getting you to the table so that you can have those bold and courageous conversations, because when it comes from you, it makes a huge difference in what is needed and what change is needed. And so I want to do everything that I can to create those opportunities for you to be able to get to the table so that we can make a better society and create change for the Black community. Because here's the one thing I know, and my white counterparts really need to understand: when we move the needle forward, when we have progression in the Black community, everybody benefits. Everybody benefits, because when you move the Black community forward, you move everybody forward. Okay. Because we begin to think differently, and we begin to act differently. We begin to hire differently. We begin to school differently. We begin to go to church differently. We begin to live in our communities differently. We begin to socialize differently. And we begin to surround ourselves with people that don't look like us and act like us and talk like us. And we grow as human beings. So I love you all. Thank you for your time. And Reach out to me. I want to talk. Let's talk. I love you.